they're going to what they feel they have to go to. You know what I mean? They
Right.
go they go to what they feel is important.
Right.
In a certain sense, I never thought of it that way, Mark. The Gemara says, morning, I'm gonna stop. The Gemara says that different people obligate different people, right? You have a guy, good morning, a person who's a poor person, Hillel, he's poor, and he learns Torah, good morning, Asaf, and he goes out of his way to learn Torah, so he obligates all the poor people, right?
Right.
Good morning, Adam. So now, if the Goyim, if they're going on the snow day, they're going to their work, so
Right.
that obligates us, the Jewish people, to go in and
Cover
do
that
what we need to
yourself.
do.
Yeah.
So if they go and we don't go,
It's
that's
a
not a good sign.
bad sign. Yeah.
Okay, we are on 42. Anna, I was singing your praises by mentioning you were here yesterday. You were the man. You you're the man that was live here. Okay. Membez Amanal 42A 42A2. So the Gemara just explained. We said that Rabbi Shimon ben Manasseh oseh sonei l'tochamin. We said that Rabbi Shimon ben Manasseh forbade you from placing cold water into hot water. He said that if the hot water is, let's say, in a kli sheni, it's in a second utensil, where Beit Hillel says if the water is in a kli sheni, if it's not in the original pot, so we say by water we say kli sheni ein mevashel. The utensil will not cook the water, and therefore you can even put cold water into a hot utensil. In contrast to a hot bath, which is heated up from fire, which is a kli rishon, which is the first kli, you cannot put cold water into a hot bath because that's going to cook the hot bath. Being that the water is on the bottom, the hot water is on the bottom, it's going to go ahead and cook the cold water. But Rabbi Shimon Manasseh said, according to the Gemara's interpretation, that he's going to forbade putting cold water into hot water, even if it's a second kli, and he will allow you to put hot water into cold water because the cold water on the bottom will prevent the hot water from cooking that cold water, right? If you put the hot water into cold water, he'll allow it, and but he will not allow you to put cold water in hot water, even though it's a kli sheni. So the Gemara said, according to that interpretation, it comes out that Reb Shimon ben Manasseh is lining up with Beit Shammai. So to that, the Gemara, and which means he's not a third opinion, number one, because we listed Beit Hillel, we listed Beit Shammai, we listed Reb Shimon ben Manasseh. If he's saying like Beit Hillel, that means he's not a third opinion. It should just say, if he's saying like Beit Shammai, it should say V'chein. And similar, Reb Shimon ben Manasseh says the same thing as Beit Shammai. And also, the Gemara is also questioning, also the halacha, we said follow the Shimon ben Manasseh. Now that would be come out that the halacha would be like Beit Shammai, and we know generally the law is not like Shammai. So that's the Gemara's question. Lima Reb Shimon ben Manasseh, Beit Shammai? Are you going to say that Reb Shimon ben Manasseh is going like Beit Shammai? That's not. It doesn't seem to be too logical. And Reb Shimon ben Manasseh would not have lined up with Beit Shammai, and the halacha would not have followed Reb Shimon ben Manasseh because the halacha followed Beit Hillel. So that's the Gemara's question. So the Gemara says, Hachikama. What Shimon ben Manasseh is saying, he's saying, the Tana Kama, the early Tana, the one who mentioned the argument of Beit Shammai and Beit Hillel, he understood Beit Shammai and Beit Hillel argue. Comes Rav Shimon in this situation. Comes Rav Shimon ben Asya and he says, no. Lo nechlaku b'shamai beit Hillel b'davar zeh. Beit Shammai and Beit Hillel are not arguing in this matter. Meaning to say, you recorded, you said over, you rabbi, whoever the rabbi is, the anonymous rabbi, said that there's an argument in Beit Shammai and Beit Hillel whether you could put cold water into hot water when the hot water is a cliche. Good morning, Simon. And comes Rav Shimon ben Asya says, I disagree. There's no argument. Even Beit Hillel would hold you can't put the cold water into the hot water. Maybe the reason why he would hold, even though it's a cliche, maybe he would hold that if you put it into that hot water, maybe you'll put it actually into a kli rishon. Maybe he would be concerned that you would actually come to put it into kli rishon. Maybe that would be the reasoning. Whatever the reasoning would be, that's what he's saying. Beit Shammai and Beit Hillel don't argue. They both agree. That's what Shimon Asya is saying against the anonymous rabbi's recording of the argument. He says there's no argument. He's not lining up with Beit Shammai. If you say there's no argument and you say Beit Hillel agrees, then it's not that he's taking a position of Beit Shammai. He's following Beit Hillel and Beit Shammai. Okay. Simon, we are on the last line of 42a2. Amar Rav Huna bereid Rav Yeshua. Rav Huna, the son of Rav Yeshua, says, Chazina le Rava. I saw Rava, the low kapir amana. He wasn't, when it came to a kli sheni, when it came to the secondary, not the original pot that the food was cooked in, that the water was cooked in, rather the water went from pot A, from the original pot to pot B, or cup A to, or whatever, it went to a cup B, or meaning it's not the original pot, it's kli sheni. I saw Rava, he wasn't makbid. He wasn't particular about putting cold water into hot water in the kli sheni. He didn't make a difference then whether it was a basin, a bowl that you wash your hands and feet with, which the Gemara said that's usually heated up to a much higher temperature. You like it's very hot. It didn't make a difference as long as the water was in a kli sheni, in a second events vessel. He had no problem putting cold water into hot water because we said water is not easy to cook, and therefore the kli sheni, the second utensil, will not cook it because the walls of the utensil cooled off some of the water. Now, where did Rava know that there's no problem with the kli sheni? Miditani Rav Chia. Rav Chia learned in a Braita. We now turn to page 42a3. Tani Rav Chia. Notin Adam Kiton Shamayim. A person could go ahead and take a jug of water, and you can place this jug, you have a water bottle. You can take this water bottle and put it into the tof seifel shamayim. You could put it into a basin of water, and it doesn't make a difference if the basin of water that you're putting it into is hot water, meaning putting a cold water bottle into hot water. You could put a mayim letoch seifel shamayim. You could put a water bottle into a basin of water. Bein chamil letoch sonein, whether you're putting hot, whether this water bottle is boiling hot, right? You had heated up this water bottle before Shabbat, and now you want to put it into a basin of cold water to take off some of the heat. Bein hamin letoch sonein, or bein sonein letoch hamin, or whether it's cold and you want to put it into the hot water, just take off some of the chill. So we see clearly from the Braita that you could go ahead and place cold water even into hot water, being that the hot water is a kli sheni. So that's what the Gemara wanted to say. So Omale Rav Huna Rav Ashi.
Just for the record, for this Klisheni and the Klishishi, I tried it in shul on Shabbat. I put it into a third cup. I put my finger in it, and it was very, very hot. I had to recoil. I
Right.
couldn't. It's still third cup. It was. I think you could almost cook something in it. You know.
I hear you. Okay. So Omale Rav Huna Rav Ashi. Dilma Shiny Hatam. By the way, it's beautiful that you're thinking about our Gemara, Mark, right? That's what everybody should be thinking about. Omale Rav Huna Rav Ashi. Dilma Shiny Hatam. Maybe you can't prove from over there. That right there was the mafsik kli. You put a water bottle into hot water. So where was the water? In the bottle. It was a water bottle, right, Simon? If a water bottle, so maybe because it's in the bottle, it's the water's contained in a container, and you put that water which is in the container into hot water, being that there is the in order for the water that's in the bottle to get cooked up, it has to be heated through this container that it's in. So the heat of the water would have to do a very good job to penetrate the bottle, which contains the water. So maybe over there is where he says that the water, the hot water that's in the klisheni will not cook the water that's in the cold water bottle. But if you put actual loose cold water, if you pour actual cold water into a basin that has hot water, even though it's a klisheni, maybe it would be a problem. So how could you prove? How could Rava conduct himself in life and not be concerned about on Shabbat pouring cold water into hot water, or hot water into cold water, provided that it's a klisheni? And the source you're telling me is because he says the case of placing a water bottle into hot water, but maybe that's different because it's water that's in a bottle. That's the Gemara's question. So to that, the Gemara answers, Amalei, so Rav Ashi responds to Rav Huna, Ma'ora Itma. Really, the proper text of the Braita is not that you placing the bottle of water into the hot water. You're pouring the contents of the bottle of water. You're pouring the cold water into the hot water. So it's not there's no chatzitza, there's no hefsek of the utensil. There's no utensil that the water is contained in. Actually, it's you're pouring actual cold water into hot water, and since the hot water is in a secondary utensil, the second utensil sheni, you're good. Amalei ma'ori itma. It says it's really you read it ma'ora. You're pouring, and that ma'ora adam kiton shamayim. And the jug, it's not that you're placing the jug in the jug itself with the water, it's you're pouring the contents of the jug into the hot water. We are on 42A3. Ma'ara Adam. A person. The more thought, but it was less of an issue because since the water, it's the cold water that's in the bottle. I mean, it's not itself touching the hot water that you're placing it into. It's in a utensil. Right. For that cold water to heat up, when you put cold water in and it's harder to get that water cold when it's in a water bottle. Right. That's what the Gemara is suggesting. Because the heat of that water that's in the basin of that bowl has to go penetrate through the walls of the water bottle and then actually heat up and boil the water that's in the water bottle. So the Gemara says therefore you can't prove, or the fact that you can place a bottle of water in a container into hot water, which is the hot water is the second utensil, is no proof that you can pour actual loose water directly, cold water into a utensil that has hot water. But the Gemara says he's saying to him the proper text in the Braita is not placing the water that's in the bottle actually while it's in the bottle, Simon. Rather, you pour the contents of the bottle into it. You can actually pour the content of the bottle, of the water bottle, into the basin that has water, whether it's being chamin l'toch senain, whether you're pouring hot into cold, being senain l'toch chamin, or cold into hot. There's no problem because it's kli sheni. Okay. Now let's continue in the Gemara. I mean, there's a nice little summary here in the art scroll. Maybe I'll share some of the summary that they have over here. That the bottom line is you can't pour cold water into hot water if the hot water is a kli rishon, right? If let's say the actual pot that came off the fire, it was boiling, and now you took it off the fire. Now you want to put, it's very hot. The soup is very hot. I want to add some ice cubes to the soup, the original pot of soup. I want to pour a little more water into the pot of soup that I took off the fire. I cannot do that on Shabbat. That could be a biblical prohibition of cooking the cold water, being that the cold water is going into that original kli rishon. That would be a problem, big problem. Now, to pour hot water from, to pour hot water into a cup of cold water. So we said you could pour hot water into a cup of cold water, according to the Gemara, because the cold water on the bottom will not cook the hot water. Cool down the hot water, right? It won't cook it. All right. So according to this, based on this, okay. Then also we said that we treat the bowl that we use for washing, even though people want it to be very hot to wash your hands and feet, we treat it like any cup of water, any cup that has the status of a kli sheni. Now, this is some of the way Rashi learns the Gemara. Okay, we're going to continue in the Mishnah. Now we got a new Mishnah. Ha'ilfis. Ha'ilfis, let's say, is a pan. You have a pan of that had food that was on the fire, and you removed it. Ilfis v'akedera she'avira mirutachim. If you have this pan of food that was cooked up, or you have a pot that was also a food that you remove, both the items you remove from the fire. Let's say you removed it right before Shabbat, or you removed it. It's still boiling, and as long as these are hot, boiling, they have a power to cook. So lo yitain tochu tavlin. The Mishnah says you can't put spices into this pot because this is a kli rishon. This pot. So we're gonna see. The Gemara will talk about salt. Stay tuned. Very good. We're going to talk about salt. It's going to be a big discussion about salt. So you can't. Again, this is a kli rishon. This is the original pot. This is not. We're not talking about that you remove the contents of the pot. That would be the second point of the Mishnah. Right, Simon? Right, Adam? This is the original pot that you took off the fire, right? You put it on the counter. Watch out. Don't touch, don't do any, don't put anything into, don't put any tavlin.
There's no flavor in it. You don't add anything.
You can at this point the Gemara is saying you can't add anything because it's a kli rishon. We treat the pot that's off the fire as if it's on the fire. As Ben Hashmashot. Ben Hashmashot is twilight, after sunset. Let's say Rashi says you took it off Ben Hashmashot. You took it off before the stars come out, after sunset. Now, why the commentaries discuss that? Why does meaning you took it off on? Meaning the point is it's already a time of. Meaning if you took it off well before Shabbat, then if you took it out an hour before Shabbat, half hour before Shabbat, it's not boiling anymore. So when did you take off this pot that there's a problem that it's still boiling? So Rashi gives the example of Ben Hashmashot. After it's very common that after sunset, between sunset and dark, the wife is already taking off the pot from the fire, or taking off the pot that was boiling. That's the time that they usually would take off the pot. Maybe because you ever see soup gets so hot, and therefore you can't eat it. It's when it's so hot. So maybe it was common. They took it off at that time to give it a little bit of time to cool off. But but once they took it off, it's still boiling, and it's bein hashmashot. Now, once the sun has gone down, the sun has set, you have to. It's like Shabbat. You can't. So therefore, you can't put any spices into that pot because that would be cooking the spices. We're talking about raw spices. You can't put a raw spice into it because you would be cooking the raw spice. Now, it's interesting, they bring down a machluket because Rashi says that seems to indicate the problem is because as long as it's boiling, it's going to cook. But let's say it's already it's not boiling anymore. Can you go ahead and put in spices with this pot into the original pot? Right. So let's say we're talking with so I would think again we have to look into it. I would think again if you can't touch that chicken and you would move your hand back, was probably that's called that it's that's um so it right. So if the food is boiling, the pot is boiling, you can't put in spices. But what happens now? The pot is not boiling anymore. The original pot is not boiling. I can put if I put my finger in that pot, it won't recoil. Let's say. Good morning, Boker Tov. Right. So
you see, you're still gonna recoil. So you're not eating warm food. You want to eat your soup hot.
right, but the soup is still hot, but it's not boiling anymore. No bubbling, right? You don't see any bubbling. It's not really hot. That level of heat. Are you allowed to put the spices into that pot at that point? Because it's not it's not. Let's say you won't cook the spices, but are we afraid? Because if your hand is not recoiling, we'll say it's not going to cook. But are we afraid that if we're going to allow you to put it in at this point, maybe you're going to come put it in at a point when it's boiling? That is so they bring down that is there a rabbinical fence here or not? Did the rabbis make a rabbinical fence when you're dealing with the original pot that was cooked? If you took it off the fire and it's not recoiling, will we still say that we're afraid to allow you to go ahead and put it into the original pot? Because you're playing with the original. You know what I'm saying? Correct. The original boiling, when you take it off and you put the spices in, the raw spice in, it's the right there. Now it's not recoiling. You waited a certain amount of time. Not recoiling. It's still hot, but it's not recoiling. It's nice, Now, are we going to make a rabbinical fence to say, don't put the spice in now? What's that again? You're not cooking the spice. But the question is, are we afraid? Are we going to make a fence to say, today you're being careful and you're putting in the spice when it's not recoiling? But tomorrow, next week, you might be putting in the spice when it is recoiling. Because you're playing with the original pot. You're not in the cliche area. You're in the hot area. You're in the zone. You're in the zone. So that is they actually bring down a machloket in the Achronim that there's different opinions in the commentaries. They bring that the Ritva, one of the Rishonim, he says since you took off the pot while it was boiling hot, even if now it's not boiling hot anymore, we're afraid maybe you're going to come to put in the spices when it's still boiling hot. So therefore, he holds actually it would be forbidden, and actually in halacha there's different opinions regarding this. Now, the Mishnah continues. Now we're turning the page. Mabruk. Aval noteinu l'toch hakara. But if it's a klisheni, now you go ahead and you could put the spices into a plate or into a big bowl that and from because they're klisheni, and since it's a klisheni, it's a no problem. Now, and they point out that we're talking about this klisheni. Good morning. Is even if your hand's gonna recoil.
Listen to this. This ruling applies only when the secondary vessel contains liquid. However, there is hot solid food in the secondary vessel, like a chicken. Many authorities rule that we may not add spices to it as long as the food is still hot enough that the hand recoils.
Right. So that right. What is that about? Good morning. Because it doesn't have the walls of the because of the walls, correct? Because a solid food, it's called a dover gush. It's a whole item. Right. So that means that idea of klisheni.
I would think solid would be more lenient.
So let's explain what Mark just said. Mark just said that the klisheni that we say klisheni doesn't cook is we said one of the main reasons is because the walls of the pot cool it down. But if you have a big blog, whatever the right word is, of food, which is chicken, or you take a cholent, take meat and potatoes. So the meat and potatoes, everything it's more contained, it's together, it's mushed together. So therefore the walls don't have they're not doing less effect. And therefore we are more careful about that, even if it is in the klisheni, as long as it's still very hot. Good morning, welcome to the class. As long as it's very hot, it's recoiling, right? They said that we're going to say that klisheni mevashel. That's going to be an exception that by a solid. According to many opinions, we're going to be strict by. So it's a matter of. But you hear the logic why?
Of course, I think the kli does affect the temperature on the bottom of the food, for sure, but not.
But in the center.
Totally.
Right. So therefore, that's why we're going to be.
But what about the time? I'm thinking what's really going to lower the temperature is the time it takes to go through this, the walls.
Right. You're saying if you pour something in from the tea kettle into a pot, into a cup, if you wait a little bit, that's gonna have a very big effect.
You're going to wait a little bit just by going through all that. Whereas like you take something off the stove, if you were allowed to just put the spices in it, you would do it right away. But if you knew you had to go through this step, it stalls you. And so that's just another thing that physically may do more than the walls are doing.
I mean, the fact that you have to pour into another utensil. What's the time?
Yeah, the
Time matters more than
The walls.
or at least it's another thing, even if the walls thing
Okay.
doesn't.
Okay, maybe that's also part of the equation, but it seems like there's more focus on the walls. But so that's very. So now,
But I think wait, well, but then that means recoil. Equal time equals recoil. What do you mean? So in other words, if I'm waiting, you say, okay, I'm gonna make a rule that if you wait 5 minutes, you could do it. You could put the spice down, because it's not gonna cook in 5 minutes, right?
Mhm.
If you wait till you recoil, then if it's 5 minutes, 3 minutes, or 10 minutes, if you put your finger in the chicken, it's not, you don't recoil it.
That works too.
That works too. So time equals recoil.
Yeah, but I think a lot of it is what people are not following the rules. Like, if you could just say the rule is recoiling, then that would be the rule. But no, I think nobody's following that, which is why there's these other rules, right?
we're saying we're saying when a liquid, even if it's recoiling, right? we're saying when you pour from the cup, from the tea kettle into a cup, second cup, we say, at that point, we say it's not gonna cook. It's not, you could put the water in, you could put the spice in,
Even if you recall.
even if you recoil. That's what we're saying.
No, so you're not
Recoil,
installing
we're not
the-
using the recoiling. You could always use, right, we're not using the recoiling to be that defining factor. Cliche, right, morning, it's a cliche knee is the main thing. And this is, by the way, not with salad. That's why on Shabbat, right, very good point. That's why on Shabbat, when we have liver, because let's say we serve cholent, right? And let's say the cholent will consider as a cliche knee, which in itself is a question. Because the ladle, so when you put the ladle in the pot, the ladle might be also counted as the original kli, as original utensil. And you put, it could be second. If it's a second, and the plate, then the plate is the third kli shlishi. And then you put, but what we do by liver, we have a separate plate. We use this, we don't put the liver on the plate with where you have the cholent. If the liver, I always ask, was the liver cooked or not cooked? Is it raw or not raw? If it's raw, okay, or whatever, if the onions were cooked, or let's talk about a salad. If you're going to put a salad, you have to be careful not to put salad, which was not, salad is not cooked food, onto the cholent. If you're going to mix it with your cholent, if the cholent is a cliche in the cliche knee, and the salad was not cooked, and now and because the cholent is a salad food, we'd have cooking the salad. Exactly. So that's the issue where we have in practical application. What you were saying, that's the difference between a solid and a liquid. Therefore, you have to be careful when it's in a cliche knee.
It's not only spice, actual food.
Actual food, any.
You can put a tomato on top of my chicken.
Right.
You can cook it.
Right. Exactly. Right. Correct.
So you need to serve the salad in a separate plate.
So in order to prevent that, we won't have, right, so therefore we would put the salad in a separate, or we remove the salad from the table. I'll take the salad off when we come to the main course. I mean, you have the salad on for the first course, but if it comes to the main course, let's remove those items. If a person might not be at the top of his game, and they might mix the raw food with this boiling hot.
Once I don't need to recoil.
Then you're fine. Then you're fine. Right. So you could use, if you don't recoil, you're good.
Even if you do recoil, how to go past that.
Right. There are times you could go past that recoil doesn't make a problem. That's what we said if you have in a liquid, that you have a liquid of.
Liquid.
We don't go
recoil. You can put the spot. You can put whatever you want.
Right, but we're saying even though you can't,
You pull your finger right out.
pull right out, or you recoil, you can still right. But in salad, you can't do that.
You can't do that.
Unless,
If you don't recoil, then
you can do it.
Tomato right on top.
Exactly. That would be the, now,
Recoiling matters really in salad.
now, unless most probably it would be a question, would be a cliche, right? If you make the salad, if you put the salad into a third utensil, that the chicken, third, right? That's chicken, which is the salad, the cliche, that you should be good. And obviously, it does something. Maybe not enough. Maybe not enough. A salad might not do enough, but if you put it to two utensils, maybe already.
But it's is it the symbolicness or is it?
There has to be something's happening. It has to be more than symbolic.
Okay, not just symbolic.
Something else. Something is happening. It's being cooled off. Okay, time flies when you're having fun. Have a great day, everybody.